Today I'm boarding Holland America's Koningsdam for a 7-night cruise to Alaska. I'll show you exactly what it's like to sail on one of Holland America's Pinnacle class ships. From our upgraded signature suite, to the included food, the service, the ship itself, and some pretty incredible Alaska scenery. From glaciers to ziplining, chasing whales, and chasing through the mud. Plus, two big questions. Will the weather put a damper on our trip? And is Holland America the right fit for the way I like to cruise? If you're new to the channel, I'm Brad. My goal is to help you get the most out of your vacation with honest trip reviews, guides, and real-world tips. If you'd like more videos like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one. And with that, let's pick up our journey in Vancouver. Good morning and welcome to Vancouver, Canada. It's my first time here. What a great place to start an Alaskan adventure with the mountains and the city in the background. Plus, we're going to jump on Koningsdam, my home, for the next 7 days. Wasting no more time, let's just get right on board. First, we'll need to get checked in at Canada Place. This terminal is definitely one of the more scenic cruise terminals I've sailed from, but the process still has a lot of steps, so this is not quite as simple as just walking straight onto the ship. First, it's document checks, then getting through security, and since this cruise is heading to Alaska, going through the required immigration process. Once that was all sorted, we were on our way, and this is always one of my favorite parts of any cruise. There's just something about getting that first close-up look at the ship, knowing it's about to be home for the next week. Launched in 2016, Koningsdam is a Pinnacle-class ship from Holland America. She's in more of a mid-size premium cruise ship category, coming in at about 970 feet long with a capacity for around 2,650 guests and 1,036 crew. A great fit for Alaska. Stepping on board, I right away get a feel for the personality of this ship. It's calm, polished, and a little more understated than some of the ships I've been on recently. And as usual, once I step on board, my brain does that thing where all the real-world stress starts to melt away. After a quick stop at our assembly station and getting the safety requirements out of the way first, it was time to start exploring just a little bit before the room was ready. And by this point, we were ready for lunch. We decided to start at the Lido Market, which is Holland America's main buffet. Embarkation Day buffets can be chaotic, but this was actually a nice surprise. There were carving stations, made-to-order pasta, salads, rice bowls, and quite a bit more variety than I expected. For a first meal on board, this was a good start. With lunch out of the way, it was finally time to head up to our cabin. Welcome aboard the Koningsdam and welcome back to the channel. My cruise buddies Justin and, not to be too confusing, another Brad. You might recognize them from some of my other cruise videos, and I'm super excited that they're here with me on this Alaska trip. It's only been a couple hours, guys. What do we think of the ship so far?
It's been wonderful. I'm really excited to see Alaska.
Yeah, hang out on this balcony later is where it's going to be at for Alaska.
Oh yeah, I could not agree more. Moving right along, this is cabin 7102. A signature suite on deck 7 on the port side. Right away, it feels noticeably larger than a standard balcony veranda cabin. There's a main sleeping area, a separate sitting and dressing area with a pull-down Murphy bed for me, a desk, a good amount of storage, and a large private balcony that I'm planning to use a lot on this trip. This extra living space and pull-down bed is the biggest reason we went with this cabin. When you're traveling with friends, having somewhere to sit that isn't someone else's bed makes a big difference. The bathroom is also a major upgrade with dual vanities, a jetted tub, and a separate glass-enclosed shower. And later in the video, I'm going to break down what this upgraded cruise cabin actually cost and whether I think it was worth it. There's definitely more to see, but as we're about to sail away from Vancouver, let's get unpacked, banish the suitcase under the bed, and head up to the sail away celebration. And just like that, we're off, bound for Alaska. And this is one of those sailways that's not to be missed. Sailing out of Vancouver gives you city views, mountains in the distance, and the iconic sailing under the Lions Gate Bridge. So where exactly are we going over the next week? We're starting here in Vancouver, then spending our first full day cruising through the Inside Passage on our way to Juneau. Then it's on to Skagway, followed by sailing through Glacier Bay. Then we'll visit Ketchikan before one more scenic cruising day through the Inside Passage and finally back to our home port at Vancouver. It is a packed week, but in a very different way from some of my recent Caribbean cruises. It's definitely going to be an adventure, and I'm excited to share it all with you. Back inside, now that we're on our way and evening is already creeping in, it's time to get cleaned up, find a good drink, and start settling into Koningsdam. Tonight we have dinner booked at Tamarind, one of Holland America's specialty restaurants, and one of the venues I've heard the most about on this ship, so I hope it lives up to the hype. But first, pre-dinner drinks. We decided to start at the Crow's Nest, mostly because we wanted somewhere with a view. On an Alaskan cruise, the bars with the big windows are where everyone will want to be. Growing hungry, we headed off to our first dinner of the cruise at Tamarind. Tamarind is Holland America's Pan-Asian specialty restaurant, and the space itself immediately feels different from the main dining room. It's calmer, more intimate, and if you time it right, you can get some really great views while you eat. This was a perfect first night choice. To start, we shared the Tamarind Sampler, which ended up being a really great way to try several things at once. The satay was especially a standout for me, with a nice char, a rich sauce, and just enough spice. For my main, the other Brad and I chose the wasabi and soy crusted beef tenderloin, while Justin went with the coconut curry chicken. The beef was tender, the crust gave it a little bite, and overall, this was a very strong first start. This is the kind of dinner that could really set the tone for the week. If Holland America can deliver on food service, especially in a setting like this, I think this trip may end up feeling very different from some of the bigger, louder ships I've been on recently. For dessert, we finished with the pineapple coconut tapioca and passion fruit cloud. A great ending to a very good meal. With dinner at an end, it was time for one of my favorite cruise traditions, wandering the ship at night. Tomorrow is a full scenic cruising day through the Inside Passage, which should give us a much better chance to explore more parts of this ship. For now, it's time to head back to the room, get the PJs, and say goodnight from somewhere between Vancouver and Alaska. Good morning from our first full day on Holland America's Koningsdam. Today is a scenic cruising day through the Inside Passage, and for Alaska, that feels like the right way to start. The views this morning are already setting the tone. We've got the entire ship to explore today, but first things first, coffee. Without a coffee maker in the room, we headed out to grab some coffee. Some early impressions. Koningsdam feels very warm and comfortable so far, with lots of places that seem built for sitting, relaxing, and watching the scenery go by. We started at the Grand Dutch Cafe, the main coffee spot on board. It has coffee for purchase, a full bar, and Dutch-inspired snacks, and it feels like a really nice place to ease into the day. And make sure you grab one of these giant Bosca bowls, but make sure you bring your appetite. With that out of the way, let's take a look around and head down to deck number 2. I'm not going to cover every corner of the ship here, but since this is our first full day on board, this feels like the right time to show you the spaces that really shaped our experience. Down here on deck 2, there are several live music venues, which seems to be a really big part of the Holland America experience. This includes B.B. King's Blues Club, Billboard on board with its dueling pianos, and the Rolling Stone Lounge. Music really is at the heart of this ship, reflected in the artwork on the walls, and even in the carpets and walls of the hallways. Next up is the Ocean Bar, which is one of those classic pre-dinner drink spots. Toward the front of the ship is the World Stage, which is the main theater on board. Here they host various shows, guest speakers, and other events. Also on this deck is the library, a few shops, and a large main dining room. If specialty dining is more your style, you'll also find Rudy's Salle de Mar, the seafood spot on board, and Pinnacle Grill, which we'll be checking out later in the week. Up one deck to deck 3 is the casino, and your standard ship venues like some shops, guest services, and an old school photo gallery. Let's jump all the way up to the top of the ship to deck 12, and one space I already think is going to matter a lot on this trip, the crow's nest. With its huge windows and wide views over the water, and for Alaska, this kind of lounge is essential. Here you can also grab a coffee or a drink, sit for a while and play a board game, or just watch the scenery change. We'll head back down to decks 9 and 10 to get a better look as we sail the inside passage. Here you'll find the heated sea view pool, hot tubs, and bar at the rear of the ship, giving those gorgeous aft wake views. If being outside isn't your goal, or if the chilly Alaska weather isn't cooperating, there's also the indoor Lido pool with its retractable glass roof and cozy warm interior. When you get hungry, you can also stop by the Dive-In or New York Deli and Pizza for some quick order bites. You can even order these ahead on the app. And don't forget the gelato. Back indoors, you'll also find a nicely appointed spa, hydro pool, and fitness center with beautiful views out the front of the ship. And finally, at the top of the ship is the sports deck, with lots of spots for keeping active and taking in some beautiful views. After a lot of playing tour guide, it was time to slow things down a bit. And honestly, that feels like the point of this kind of sea day. Not every moment has to be packed with an activity. Sometimes it's finding a quiet spot, playing cards with friends, and looking up every few minutes because the view outside has changed again. Later in the afternoon, we headed to Holland America's afternoon tea. This is one of those classic cruise traditions that fits this ship very well. It's not flashy, but it is a nice little sea day ritual. Tea, small sandwiches, sweets, and a chance to sit down for a bit before the evening starts. It also goes on to give the day a little more of that old school cruise feeling, which I actually appreciated here in Alaska. This has been a very easy day, but in the best way. No big schedule, no running around, just scenery, food, and slowly getting to know the ship. But before long, it was time to get ready for dinner. Dinner tonight was in the main dining room, and after a strong first night at Tamarind, I was curious how this included dining would compare. We started with shrimp cocktail and the French onion soup, both of which were fine but not especially memorable. For mains, I had the garlic roasted chicken, the other Brad had the New York strip, and Justin went with the beef tenderloin and shrimp. The mains were better overall, though my corn did come with an unwelcome cilantro surprise. Dessert was creme brulee, caramel lava cake, and black forest cake. Nothing really wildest, but it was a perfectly decent meal. After a busy night, we're finally back to the cabin, and I'm realizing just how bright it is out here. It's nearly midnight, but tomorrow we get into Juneau. The trip really picks up. We're going to see some whales, we're going to see glaciers. I'm really excited to get into Alaska, but for now, it's time to say goodnight. Before we arrived in Juneau, we spent the morning sailing through some cold, misty Alaska scenery, which felt like the perfect preview for the day ahead. So we just dropped off some passengers here at Tracy Arm Fjord. They're off to do their excursion for the day. Bit of a gloomy day. I sure hope we get some nicer weather as we head into Juneau. You can hear that. That's the ship's foghorn because it's so foggy out here. I'm hoping that when we get to Juneau, it gets a little bit nicer. This morning, we headed back to the main dining room for a quick breakfast, and then got out to enjoy the sail into Juneau from the bow of the ship. This is where Alaska packing starts to really matter. Layers, rain jackets, comfortable shoes, and a camera you can grab quickly, because as you'll see, you never really know when the scenery or wildlife is going to show up. Welcome to Juneau, Alaska. This ship docks right near downtown, but instead of just shops and restaurants, you've got mountains rising up behind everything, low clouds hanging in the air, and water all around you. So finally in Juneau and ready to do one of my favorite kind of excursions. It's waterfalls, it's glaciers, and hopefully we get to see some whales. So very excited, let's get going. We joined our tour group and made our way onto the bus. Even the drive gives you a good sense of the area. You're moving through Juneau with mountains all around you, little glimpses of water, and that feeling that everything is a little bigger and wilder than it looks on a map. Before long, we're at our first big stop of the day, Mendenhall Glacier. Seeing a glacier in person is one of those things that's really hard to fully capture on camera. We did have about an hour here, which gave us enough time to walk around, get some photos, and take in the view. It's a very popular stop, and I can see why. You get a glacier, a lake, a waterfall, walking trails, and enough scenery that even a short visit feels worthwhile. And then we got a surprise bonus, which is not something I expected to be seeing today. Now, if you're doing this excursion, I'd definitely wear comfortable shoes and bring layers. The weather can shift quickly, and this is not the place where you want to be cold, wet, and annoyed because you packed wrong. Next up was part of the day that was probably what we were most excited about, whale watching. This is a must-do excursion for anyone coming to Alaska, but this is one of those excursions where nature is completely in charge. As we pulled away from the dock, the weather was still gray and moody, but that almost made it feel more like Alaska. Cold air, low clouds, mountains all around us, and everyone scanning the water. At first, it was a lot of waiting. A ripple would catch your eye, someone would point, the boat would slow down, and then maybe a spout in the distance, maybe a quick flash of movement, enough to know something was out there, but not quite the moment we had hoped for. Then we started to notice other boats shifting toward the same area, and the energy started to change. We got quiet and cameras came up. We started watching the guides to see where they were looking, and still only small glimpses, a spout, a little movement at the surface, and then just as we thought our luck was about to run out, the day delivered. And nature wasn't done. That's what makes whale watching so exciting and also a little frustrating. Nothing's guaranteed. You spend a lot of time staring at water, hoping something's going to happen, but when it pays off, it really pays off, and it's a moment I'll always remember. After the excursion, we made our way back toward downtown Juneau. One major bonus with Holland America was the extended time in port. Even after a full excursion day of glaciers, waterfalls, and whales, we still had a few hours to wander downtown Juneau. I was especially happy to make it to Deckhand Dave's, one of my all-time favorite places for fish and chips. Highly recommended if you're in Juneau. We also had a bonus stop at Jellyfish Donuts, which is worth checking out if you have the time. My tip though, go later in the day if you want to skip the worst of the line. Back on board, it was time to wind down and enjoy the crisp night air. Today had a little bit of everything Alaska. It was a full day, but this was exactly the kind of day I was hoping for. Tomorrow, we're in Skagway, doing one of my favorite activities on an excursion, so we better get some sleep. Good morning from Skagway, Alaska. And today is an early one, so we started with room service breakfast, followed by a quick hop off the ship. Skagway is a much smaller town than Juneau, with its quaint streets and small shops nestled under the mountains. We'll explore more of it later if we have the time, but first, something a bit more exciting. We made our way to the excursion meeting point. After checking in with the group, we loaded up and headed out. The drive itself gives you a quick look at the area around Skagway. Sufficiently kitted up, we were ready to go for our zipline adventure. The course took us through trees, across mountain views and waterfalls, and enough open space to feel exciting without ever feeling overwhelming. This ended up being one of the most beautiful zipline courses I've ever done, and definitely an excursion I'd recommend if you want something a little more active in Skagway without it feeling too extreme. I'll leave a link to this excursion along with some of my other favorite Alaskan excursion ideas in the description below. After our ziplining adventure ended, we headed back into Skagway to wander through town, grab a drink and a bite to eat, then head back to the ship. Back on board, it was time to sail away from Skagway and get ready for what might be the biggest day of the entire cruise, and one of the main reasons we booked this itinerary. So I'm really hoping the weather holds out. Good morning from Glacier Bay. Today's plan is pretty simple. Coffee, layers, cameras, and as much time outdoors as we can handle. Just Alaska from the balcony, the crow's nest, open decks, and anywhere we can get a good view. One really cool addition is that park rangers came on board for the day. They had maps, displays, and information set up around the ship to help explain the area, the wildlife, and the people who called this place home long before cruise ships ever came through here. It made Glacier Bay feel like more than just a pretty view. There was some context behind what we were seeing. The scale, of course, is hard to capture on camera, but the beauty is unmistakable. The blue in the ice, the stillness in the water, the mountains all around us, and even with the gloomy weather, it still felt special. This is one of those cruise days where the ship itself is the excursion. And Holland America had a few nice touches to help warm everyone up, including glühwein and split pea soup during the Glacier Bay sailing. It was cold, gray, and a little damp, but it was also one of the most memorable days of the trip. After spending most of the day outside, we headed back to the room to warm up, recharge, and get ready for dinner. Tonight we have a reservation at Pinnacle Grill, Holland America's steakhouse, and after a day like Glacier Bay, it feels like the right night for a slightly nicer dinner. Dinner felt like a real celebration of classic cruise dining, from appetizers and soup that were rich and hearty, to a Caesar salad made tableside. The steaks were cooked well, nicely seasoned, and paired with wines that made the whole dinner feel more like an event than just another meal on board. And dessert kept that going, with options like soufflé and key lime pie. Overall, this was one of the strongest meals of the cruise, and after a full day in Glacier Bay, Pinnacle Grill made for a really nice way to close out the evening. To round out the night, we donned our best orange clothes for Holland America's Orange Party, and then somehow ran into an army of chefs yelling "Chocolate Surprise!" I'm not even going to fully explain that one, you're just gonna have to experience it for yourself. Tomorrow we're in Ketchikan for our final Alaska port day. Good morning from Ketchikan. It's out there somewhere. As you can see, we've kind of been chasing this gloomy weather. Today we were supposed to be getting off and doing an e-bike expedition. Unfortunately, that did get canceled because of the weather. So we're trying something else. We're going to do a little ATV mud running sort of thing and see how that goes in the rain. It might be extra fun. After whale watching in Juneau, ziplining in Skagway, and yesterday's incredible day in Glacier Bay, today we're doing one more excursion before we begin our journey back towards Vancouver. Ketchikan was a busy port today, so we're tendering in this morning. Once the ship was cleared, we headed down and made our way onto the tender. If you've never tendered before, instead of walking straight off the ship onto a dock, you board a smaller boat that brings you into port. It can add a little extra time, but also gives you some really unique views of your cruise ship from the water. After checking in, we headed out to the starting point, got our safety briefing, and climbed into our Polaris adventure carts. There were 3 of us, 1 muddy trail, and a whole lot of puddles waiting. This was not the quiet, peaceful rainforest e-bike tour we had originally expected. This was a much louder, messier, and probably a lot more chaotic excursion. But sometimes the backup plan works out just fine. And thankfully, the weather started to clear just enough to give us some great views. It's not what we planned for Ketchikan, but I'm not mad about it. Before we wrap up this trip, let's talk about how much this cruise actually cost. For the cruise itself, we paid $2,715 per person for our signature suite and Holland America's Have It All package, which covers things like the drink package, Wi-Fi, and some shore excursion and specialty dining credits. So this was definitely not a budget Alaska cruise, but I do think it was an excellent price for the extra space, better cabin setup, and included perks. So was it worth it? For me, absolutely yes. Now, not every meal was perfect. Service could be a little slow at times, and the weather definitely changed some of our plans. But for Alaska, this ship, this cabin, and this itinerary made a lot of sense. And Koningsdam gave the trip a calmer, more comfortable pace that worked really well for this destination. Well, after waterfalls and ziplining and whales, unfortunately our adventure here on the Koningsdam in Alaska is going to come to an end. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, the whale breaching was super awesome. It's a good time.
It was beautiful. I'll definitely be back.
Yeah, we had a great time. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on board again soon. Bye.